The Valyrian freehold was the greatest civilization to ever exist. At their peak, the Valyrians conquered Westeros with their dragons, and became the strongest power on the continent. 40 Dragonlord families ruled Valyria, including the Targaryens, but they were among the weakest. Lord Aegon ruled as the head of House Targaryen. His daughter Daenerys had a vision forewarning the destruction of Valyria. Aegon believed in his daughter's prophecy, and to the surprise of the rival Dragonlords, he sold his ancestral lands and left Valyria for the island of Dragonstone, which had been a Valyrian outpost for centuries prior to their arrival. He set sail to his new seat with 5 dragons and his loyal retainers. The Dragonlord families mocked Aegon for what they saw as an act of cowardice. However, their pride was their own undoing, as 12 years later Valyria fell. The doom of Valyria lasted mere hours, but was nothing short of a cataclysm, in which 14 volcanoes of the Valyrian peninsula erupted and destroyed man, city and dragon alike. Out of the 40 Dragonlord families, only the Targaryens survived, and for 100 years they ruled Dragonstone. The fortress was built with the mysterious sorcery of the Valyrians. The towers were shaped into dragons with magic, making the fortress among the most intimidating in Westeros. 100 years after the Targaryens colonised Dragonstone, Aegon Targaryen was born. Aegon grew up to become a tall, strong warrior and had typical Valyrian features of silver gold hair and purple eyes. He wielded the famous Valyrian steel sword, Blackfire. Following ancient Valyrian tradition, he married his 2 sisters, Visenya and Rhaenys. Visenya was the eldest of the 3 siblings. She was a passionate but stern woman, as well as a skilled warrior who wielded the legendary Valyrian steel sword, Dark Sister. Rhaenys was the youngest and the more playful of the 2, preferring poetry and dancing rather than swordplay. Unlike his ancestors, Aegon was intrigued by Westeros, having visited Old Town and the Arbor. He even commissioned a table carved in the shape of the continent. However, he left out one important feature: the map had no borders, for Aegon Targaryen wanted to unite all 7 kingdoms of Westeros under his banner. The north was ruled by the Kings of Winter, the Starks, who resided in Winterfell. In the fertile lands of the Reach sat the Kings of Highgarden, House Gardener. House Arryn ruled as the Kings of the Mountain and the Vale. To the rich lands of the west reigned House Lannister of Casterly Rock. House Durrandon ruled as the Storm Kings from their seat, Storm's End. To the south lay the desert lands of Dorne, ruled by the Martell princes and princesses of Sunspear. Out of all the kings of Westeros, Harren the Black was the most feared. Harren of House Hoare ruled over the Iron Islands and the Riverlands with an iron fist, and he enslaved thousands of rivermen to construct his gigantic fortress, Harrenhal. After nearly 40 years, Harrenhal was nearing completion, and the neighbouring kingdoms grew fearful that Harren would now be free to conquer their lands from such a formidable and impenetrable fortress. Fearing the wrath of the Ironborn, King Argilac Durrandon of the Stormlands sought after an alliance with Aegon by offering his daughter's hand in marriage. As a wedding dowry, Argilac offered all lands east of the God's Eye from the Trident to the Blackwater Rush. However, these lands did not belong to the Storm King, they were in fact part of Harren's realm. The true motive of Argilac was to create a buffer zone between his kingdom and Harren's, but Aegon refused the offer, as he already had 2 wives and had no need of a third. He instead made a counteroffer. Orys Baratheon would wed Princess Argilla Durrandon in his stead, and he would accept the dower lands in addition to Mass's Hook, the lands from the Blackwater to the Wendwater, and Amanda. But it was rumoured that Orys Baratheon was the bastard brother of Aegon, and Argilac was insulted at the notion of a bastard marrying his daughter. In his rage, he ordered the hands of Aegon's envoy to be severed, and they were sent back to Aegon along with a message. "These are the only hands your bastard shall have of me." Aegon did not reply. He called upon his bannermen, who were few in number but fiercely loyal. Among them were House Altegar of Claw Isle and House Valerion of Driftmark. Like the Targaryens, both of these houses were of the blood of Old Valyria. Two houses sworn to Storm's End, Bar Emin of Sharp Point and Massey of Stonedance also answered the call, severing all ties with the Storm King. After 7 days of taking counsel with his allies and sisters, Aegon finally made his decision. Ravens flew from Dragonstone to all four corners of Westeros. The High Kings and Petty Lords all received his message. From this day there would be but one king in Westeros. Those who swore allegiance would keep their lands and titles, but those who did not would be destroyed with fire and blood. The Targaryens set sail for the Blackwater Rush. Their army was small, consisting of no more than 3,000 men, but in the sky lay their deadliest weapons, 3 full-grown dragons, the likes of which Westeros had never seen. Aegon rode the largest of the 3, Balerion the Black Dread, who was over 100 years old and was the last living creature to have seen Old Valyria in all its glory. His scales were as black as the fire he breathed, his teeth were as long as swords, and his shadow engulfed entire towns as he flew above in the sky. Visenya rode Vhagar, whose fire was hot enough to melt a knight's armour and cook him inside, and Rhaenys rode the great silver dragon Meraxes, who could swallow horses whole. The Targaryen army landed at the mouth of the Blackwater Rush on the same day King Harren had finally completed the construction of Harrenhal. The landing area had 3 hills. On the highest hill, construction of a modest wooden fort began immediately, which would become known as the Aegon Fort after its ruler. Whilst Aegon consolidated his base of operations, he sent his sisters to capture nearby castles. Rhaenys flew to Rosby Castle, where the very sight of Meraxes intimidated Lord Rosby into yielding his seat, but Visenya met resistance at Castle Stokeworth, where crossbowmen fired at Vhagar, but the bolts proved to be useless against Dragonscales. Visenya repaid the favour by burning the roof of the castle, and after seeing what destruction Dragonfire could do, Lord Stokeworth yielded the castle to Aegon's cause. Aegon's first test came when Lord Darklyn of Duskendale and Lord Muton of Maidenpool decided to join their forces and march south with 3,000 men towards the Aegon Fort. In response, the Targaryens marched out to meet them in the open field under the command of Orys Baratheon. The two armies met near the Blackwater Rush. Lord Darklyn and Lord Muton hoped to drive the invaders back into the sea, but Aegon could not be seen on the field of battle. A thunderous roar came from above. The lords looked to the sky and found their answer. Aegon Targaryen rode Balerion the Black Dread. As the beast descended, it rained dragonfire down upon the already wavering men. It was within this maelstrom of fire and blood that both Lords Darklyn and Muton were killed, along with their soldiers. After the victory near the Blackwater Rush, Lord Darklyn's son and Muton's brother yielded their castles and pledged allegiance to Aegon. Duskendale was an important Westerosi port on the narrow sea and grew extremely wealthy from all the trade that passed through it. Visenya flew to the city to accept the formal surrender of House Darklyn, as well as claiming its riches to help fund the great conquests ahead. The Targaryens captured a dozen local castles on both sides of the Blackwater, and with the river now secure, Aegon had consolidated his foothold in Westeros. He commanded his defeated enemies to attend him at the Aegon Fort. He allowed the lords to keep their lands and titles in exchange for their allegiance and support in the coming conquest. To his oldest allies he bestowed new honours and titles. Daemon Valerion was made Master of Ships, Crispian Saltigar was named Master of Coin, Tristan Massey Master of Laws, and his childhood companion Orys Baratheon was proclaimed my shield, my stalwart, my strong right hand. It was at this gathering with lords old and new where Queen Visenya placed a Valyrian steel crown on Aegon's head. Queen Rhaenys stood and hailed him as Aegon, first of his name, king of all Westeros and shield of his people. From great lords and brave knights to fishermen and peasants, all cheered the coronation of their new king.